Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. We're going on a journey today, taking you from an absolute beginner all the way to mastering the core mechanics of professional UI/UX design in Figma. Whether you're staring at a completely blank digital canvas for the very first time, or you just want to really bulletproof your existing workflow, we're going to break down the exact principles you need to build stunning, highly functional interfaces. By the end of this, the interface won't be a hurdle at all. It's going to feel like a direct extension of your creative ideas. Let's get into it.
So here's our roadmap. We're kicking things off with the mindset of a designer, getting comfortable with the workspace, and then diving into the real building blocks. After that, we'll get into working smart with components, and finally, we'll wrap up with the absolute magic of auto layout and responsiveness.
All right, starting right off with the mind of a designer. Before we even touch a single tool, we need to talk about the person actually sitting behind the screen.
So here's the thing. A designer doesn't just make things look pretty. That's a huge misconception. They are, at their core, multifaceted problem solvers. It takes a really unique hybrid of skills, right? You need the technical chops to maneuver the software, sure, and the creativity to think laterally. But above all, and I mean this, you need human empathy. Empathy is what actually bridges the gap between a machine and a person. Because honestly, if you don't understand the behavior, the frustrations, or the goals of the person tapping that screen, it really doesn't matter how beautiful the interface is. It's just going to fail. Great design solves a human need first and then makes it look effortless second.
Now, depending on the medium, designers play incredibly diverse roles. We're talking everything from crafting physical interior spaces to designing consumer electronics or corporate graphic logos, but for us, our focus is zeroing right in on the UI and UX realm. User interface and user experience designers, they are the architects of the digital world. Their whole job is to ensure that when you open an app, your journey from point A to point B is intuitive, satisfying, and just completely frictionless. Every swipe, every tap, every transition needs to feel entirely natural. The goal is to literally remove any barrier between the user and what they're trying to do.
And regardless of what you're actually building, every great design relies on a proven 5-part framework. You don't just open the software and start drawing. No way. You begin with deep research and discovery to truly understand the problem. Next, you develop a core concept. Then, and only then, you design and prototype. After that, you've got to relentlessly iterate based on user feedback. And finally, you hand off the polished product to the developers. Whether you're making a tiny icon or wireframing a massive food delivery app, this iterative loop is your absolute safety net. It saves you from pouring hours into a design that, honestly, users might not even understand.
Okay, so now that we've got the philosophy down, welcome to your actual Figma workspace.
When you first open the Figma editor, I want you to think of it like a physical workshop. It becomes instantly approachable once you know exactly where your gear is kept. Your essential tools, like the Move tool and your basic frames, they're neatly mapped out right up at the top. Your raw materials and layer organization, those live predictably over on the left. Then on the right, you've got your fine-tuning dials. That's the design inspector, where you adjust colors, typography, and all those specific properties. And the center? Well, that is where the actual building happens. Keeping this simple mental map in your head means you'll literally never get lost looking for a function again.
That center stage is the canvas. Everything you built, from a single simple interactive button to a fully prototyped application with hundreds of screens, lives right here. Think of it as an infinite spatial environment where your creativity essentially has zero borders. You can zoom way out to view an entire user journey from a bird's eye view, or you can zoom all the way in to meticulously tweak the corner radius of a single pixel. It's a seriously liberating space to work in. Right, let's talk about the actual building blocks of UI. How do we start making things?
First things first, it is absolutely essential to understand the difference between a frame and a shape. A frame is not just a basic visual box. It acts as your primary device boundary, a structural container. If you're designing for, say, an iPhone 14, you start with that specific frame, which immediately sets up your layout grids, clipping boundaries, and spatial coordinates. Shapes, on the other hand, are your raw visual elements, the rectangles, polygons, ellipses, the stuff you drop inside the frame to actually build the interface. So think of it this way. The frame holds the rules, while the shapes create the visual experience.
Once you've got your basic shapes on the board, you manipulate them using Boolean operations. By mastering just 4 core operations, you can combine simple geometry into incredibly complex custom UI elements. Union is pretty straightforward. It just merges multiple elements together into one continuous shape. Intersect creates a new shape exclusively where your original elements overlap. Exclude does the exact opposite. It removes those overlapping sections entirely. And subtract selection, that one is perfect for making custom icons. Like if you place a smaller circle slightly offset over a larger one in subtract, Boom, you instantly punch a hole through the bottom layer and create a perfect crescent moon. It's just simple, reliable math applied to visual design, and it gives you the power to build pretty much anything you can imagine.
Okay, moving on. Let's talk about working smart with Figma components. This is a real game changer.
Components are basically the secret to streamlining global updates across a whole app. The best way to wrap your head around them is to think about genetics. When you create one master version of an element, every subsequent copy of it shares that exact same DNA. Change the parent, and the children automatically follow suit. It completely, 100% eliminates that incredibly tedious process of updating elements one by one.
Imagine this. You need to change a core sign-up button, but it's scattered across 50 different pages. Without components, that's a nightmare. With them, you only change the parent component. You'll spot it by the 4 checkerbox icon. You shift the color from blue to red on the parent, and instantly, all 50 child instances update across your entire project. It's magic. But it's also super flexible. If you just want to change the text on one specific child instance for, say, a local promotional page, you can override it without messing up the parent's master DNA. Honestly, this is a massive time saver that fundamentally separates the amateurs from the highly efficient pros. You build it once, and you control it everywhere.
Finally, we arrive at auto layout and responsiveness. How do we make all this adapt beautifully?
Well, before making elements stretch and adapt, we've got to ensure they're actually aligned properly. Applying a strict layout grid system, meaning defining your columns, rows, and gutter spacing, makes sure your interface never looks chaotic. You never ever want to just eyeball where a navigation bar or an image should sit. Anchoring elements to a precise mathematical grid creates this predictable rhythm. It builds a visual consistency that users subconsciously trust. It's essentially the invisible skeleton holding your entire design together.
And building on that skeleton, auto layout and constraints are your absolute secret weapons for making an app look professional and truly responsive. Auto layout lets you align elements seamlessly into strict horizontal or vertical stacks, and it handles all the padding and spacing for you automatically. Then, when you tell an element to fill container rather than just hug content, you're forcing it to dynamically stretch and adapt to its parent's boundaries. Let's say you're building a mock-up for our example, the tomato food delivery app. By grouping your elements with auto layout and using constraints, like pinning a search bar to the top and telling it to stretch horizontally, you guarantee that whether a user is on a tiny phone or a massive desktop monitor, your layout breathes, stretches, and positions itself flawlessly, every single time. It literally takes your design from a flat, static picture to a living, breathing interface.
So, we've covered a ton of ground today. You've journeyed from understanding the deep, empathetic mindset of a designer to mastering mechanical superpowers like Booleans, components, and responsive auto layouts. The power to craft meaningful digital experiences is entirely in your hands now. Because at the end of the day, how we experience a brand, how we order our dinner, how we navigate this increasingly digital world, it's all fundamentally dictated by the UI and UX choices made right here on this canvas. The mechanics, they're no longer a barrier for you. So my question to you is, how are you going to use these tools to shape the next great digital experience?